Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and if you like to make quilts but not cut out the fabric, then pre-cut quilt kits are definitely the way to go. They're pre-cut for you. You do not need to do anything. Put all the rotary cutting stuff away. We can just sit down and start sewing. And I have one that is all gray, and it's hexagons. But the hexagons are all sewn with straight seams, no set-in seams. This kit is from a company called Sit and Sew, and it really does suit the name because we just get to sit down and start sewing. Everything is pre-cut for us. We get all of the pieces, and we also get the backing and the binding. So the only thing we need to do with this is to sit down and start sewing. You can get these in many different colors, but I've chosen this all gray quilt. It's going to be a beautiful, soft summer quilt. The pattern, of course, does not have any cutting directions because they're already cut for us, but it does give sewing directions. So join me and we're going to get these hexagons together. And as you can see, they're all going to be done in straight rows. Because we're going to put all of these hexagons together in rows, we're going to start with a half hexagon. So there are 180 half hexagon pieces to make this quilt. So the two halves will make the hexagon. These are all soft grays with sort of a beach theme on them, so they're going to be a very pretty fabric to work with. We're going to start and we're going to put these together in rows. So the rows we get to stitch this way. Now we can take time and figure out exactly how our blocks are going to go together, or we can just do it random. If we do match up fabrics that are the same or very similar, as we put this together, the quilt is going to look like these are one-piece hexagons. If we put pieces together that are not the same, we will be able to see that division a little bit more. And because I want to keep this quick and fun, I'm going to do them randomly. I will need to make these long rows together. And it won't matter, the pieces are going to go together. It's the second row when it's stitched together. If we want those matching pieces, we're going to have to make sure that that second row matches up to the hexagons. But I'm just going to do it random. So I need to start with 12 pieces, and I get to sew those pieces together in a long row. When we sew the seam together, we put right sides together, and we need to leave a little dog ear on both sides. So we're going to start in that V, come right down, and we're going to end in this V. We will be sewing our standard 1/4 inch seam allowance. But you can see where that needle is going to start right in this point, and it's going to come off of the point. When that 1/4 inch seam has been stitched, when we open this up, these seams are straight. We can draw our 1/4 inch seam allowance on one piece, and then when we put these together, we can use the 1/4 inch mark as a guide. Same stitching, we've just marked it before we've cut it. There is also a way we can do this right at the sewing machine with no marking at all. We're going to use the needle and the edge of the foot as a guide. We are looking at putting these two pieces together. So I need to put my needle down. The foot's going to go up, and we're going to slide this piece in so that the edge is along the edge of that foot, and the needle is touching the fabric. This next piece, we're going to take this edge, line it up with the edge that we need it on, and just slide it up until it also hits the needle. So we have the side together, the needle is touching, and when we look, we end up with that 1/4 inch. And we can start sewing. When we come to the end, we will have that 1/4 inch little dog ear. So we're going to stitch right off, right at that V. I do like to use the stiletto to help guide that fabric. And before I take this off, I'm going to do my next seam. I'm going to start with my pieces in front of me. I'm going to have one pile that's going to go on the bottom, the one pile that's going to go on the top, and all of the fabrics are sitting up. My first piece is going to slide right up to that needle. The second piece, I'm going to flip it over and have that fabric go right against the needle. Once your fabric is lined up, start stitching. You're going to come to that little V and stitch right off the V. Take the next piece, its top piece. You can match them up a little bit on your table first and just slide this up and adjust it. And start sewing. I'm going to continue and sew all of my pieces together in one long chain. We will need 15 of these strips with 12 pieces in them for each row. If we want to match up the hexagons, we can do one row at a time and match up the fabrics. The larger edges are the edges that are going to need to be matched up. So it will only be every other block on one side and the other block on the other side. These empty spots, or the small spots, we can fill in with whatever blocks we want. When this row is stitched together, we can stitch these two together. Then we're going to match the second block. We can either work our way out or work our way down. So we can take time and match them or just do them random. We will need a total of 15 strips. I have 8 strips in one pile, 7 strips in the next. The only difference is what block we've started with. We need the first block going in one direction on those 8 strips, and on the 7 strips, we need the block going in the other direction. That way we're able to sew those together. If we stitch all of the blocks together the same direction, when we go to sew the rows together, the 2 large sides are not going to match up. We would have to take out that first piece and put it on the end, and that would move that up to match. And that will give us that full hexagon. We now need to press these strips, and we do want the seams going in opposite directions so that they're going to nestle up. There are 2 different ways we can press these strips. The 8 strips, we can press the seams going in one direction. The pile with the 7 strips can go in the opposite direction. And that way, those seams are going to nestle up. Or we can press the seams out and the other side in. So every other seam is going to change direction, and that will let them nestle up. When you do press these, be very gentle pressing because this is a bias seam. So whatever you choose to press is fine. With all those seams opposing, we're going to be able to pick our pieces up, nestle those seams, and sew a 1/4 inch down. We will have every other row going down until all of the 15 rows are finished. When those 15 strips have been nestled and sewn together, we do have these beautiful hexagons throughout the entire quilt. The quilt is now 28 inches by 37 inches, and that 37 inches can change depending on what you would like to do with each end. Because these are hexagons, we do have this irregular shaped border on both the top and the bottom. The sides are straight, but we do have these points. They could be quilted the way they are and bound, so we keep these shapes, or we can trim them off. I would recommend trimming them off after you have it quilted. And that way you only need to trim once. It's quilted, you trim it, and then you can bind it. Do a little row of stitching all the way around the border of the quilt, even for this side. Keep that stitching within that 1/4 inch seam allowance. That stitching is going to help keep all of these seams together so they don't open up. The last thing we want to do is have to restitch some of those edges. And that's going to help stabilize it until we get to the quilting. The quilt top is done, and I still have some backing and some binding. Sit and Sew does have a lot of different color variations in this hexagon quilt. I did choose the beach look, but there are lots to choose from. And each quilt is slightly different, which means your quilt will not have the exact fabric as someone else's. So each quilt is a little bit different and unique. With that fabric already pre-cut, I was able to get the quilt top done in one afternoon. These are fun projects if you want something fun to do and not have to worry about doing the cutting, choosing the fabric, or wasting any fabric. They're great to travel with, and they're great for a nice sunny day when you just want to sit down and do some sewing. I'll put a link in the description to Sit and Sew in this particular pattern. And as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. And come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.